presenter is Denis Gagne, and Denis is a well-known expert in business rules, business processes, and decision management in general. Denis was a person who coined the term triple crown for three different standards: BPMN, DMN, CMMN standards. But more importantly, Denis not just only contributes to this standard. Denis is a creator of a very popular decision intelligence product called TriceAttack. And this product demonstrates, tests, and uses and is being used in real world environment. So this is highly recommended decision intelligence platform. And I also want to tell that Denis was our presenter probably in many decision camps, but he never tells the same story. He always brings something new. And this year we can hear about, it's called Mastering Decision Orchestrations, but we can hear a very real world view of where latest LLMs tools and other tools fit our decision intelligence tools. Denis, take over.
Thank you, Jacob, for a very kind introduction. Yeah, so I tend to believe that I'm a very pragmatic type of person. At least I think so. I don't know what everybody else thinks of me, but I'm always trying to look at everything in terms of technology from a very pragmatic and applied way. And so last year in my presentation, I did an overall look at the technology behind large language models, the LLMs, and basically concluded that the best use of them would be in a neurosymbolic kind of environment where we mix those large language models with symbolic type of reasoning so that we can scaffold and correctly apply these technology. So this year, I'm continuing in the same kind of mindset. A lot of people are asking, how can we trust AI? Now, AI is a large term, and the conclusion is in my subtitle there. Basically, if you want to have explainable and justifiable decisions, keep humans in the loop. The answer is quite simple. So I'm going to take you through my thinking and my reasoning to get you there, and hopefully give you some insight on how you can achieve a practical application in your own industry or in your own context. So let's talk a little bit about business decision. I'm very interested in business decision because that's where our company is really involved in. But if you think about it, behind every business action, there's fundamentally a business decision. As it's been said many times, you know, deciding not to decide is making the decision that you're not deciding. So there's always a decision. So every business action you take is really anchored on business decisions. And business decisions are, I would say, what's the most important thing that a business can consider and do. So in justifying the need for a decision-centric organization, you can see that business decisions are directly linked to the business success. Well-made business decision will pretty much assure your business success. You have to operationalize these business decisions in the operations you follow, but a good business decision is a very great start. And it's also a great way to continuously make good business decisions to create lasting value. We certainly know that repeated poor business decision will sink any enterprise of any kind. So business decisions are very, very important, and your organization should seek to be a decision-centric organization. Now, what does that mean to be decision-centric organization? It means placing decision-making at the heart of everything you do. So decision-making in terms of how you support, enhance, and optimize those business decisions is very important. And it should be part of your operation, but also part of your culture and strategy. So in the last 10, 15 years, we've been talking a lot about, decision-making in operations, and how important it is to have good decision making, so we can automate a lot of the operational type of decision. But in a decision centric stance, you have to make sure that it's also part of your strategy and your culture. So we have to look at decision making not as an individual thing, but as part of an ecosystem of many type of decision to drive the efficiency and the success you're looking at. Let me go sidetrack a little bit. We heard a lot about orchestration already. So the notion of orchestration is basically an end-to-end coordination. So it's the management of different case and decision and workflows and across multiple people, systems, tool, and service. So we're not just talking about automating processes. We're talking about orchestrating all the different services and people within that environment. Now, I mentioned it a second ago, the end-to-end perspective is very important. We've seen in the last 15, 20 years, a lot of automation. Most automation seems to be mostly task-oriented or activity-oriented and very siloed within a particular aspect of the business or the company. The argument, and we've been making that argument at least for 20 years. I have slides going back that are quite old, talking about the impetus of using an end-to-end perspective and not just automating locally, because when you do so, all you do is you generate local optimal that are not necessarily in favor of the global optimal goal. So you have to look at it in a holistic way to make sure that you're reaching your optimal solution across your organization. So that brings us to this topic of decision-centric orchestration. Basically, it's this end-to-end business decision-making that involve various process, systems, data, and people within your organization so that you align them to make the best business decision in a repeated way and ensure that your business will thrive. Excuse me. So business decision making is a very complex thing. It involves human intuition and advanced tooling. So how can we make sure that we're leveraging all this together to get the best outcome? How can we combine humans, tooling, AI together to give us the optimal outcomes for our business? So the idea is to embed artificial intelligence into the flow of work. It's simple enough, but most people tend to forget that. The whole idea is to introduce AI so that it is basically seamless into what you're doing. We've all heard, or at least a lot of the AI folks around the table have heard, the notion of disappearing AI. And for those of you that are not aware of what this disappearing AI, it's basically this concept that when new technology come about, it seems like magic. So we use the term AI for everything that seems like impossible to do before, and now we can do it. And then with years, it kind of disappeared, just like, your autocorrection on your emails, your natural language processing, talking with Siri or talking with other tool. It seems like, yeah, that's not artificial intelligence. I'm just telling the tool what I want it to do. Or so this disappearing AI is an important factor. And it comes from the fact that we introduce this artificial intelligence in a way that is seamless within the workflow of what we're trying to achieve. And therefore, it's no longer this outside thing that is kind of scary. So the purpose of decision-centric orchestration is basically to make your organization capable of making, and choose your buzzword. I dropped a bunch of buzzword there's, great, effective, secure, explainable, justifiable, contextualized business decision. So the whole idea of decision-centric orchestration is to achieve these goals. So let me switch a little bit and talk a little bit about the role of AI in decision-centric orchestration. So AI introduced capabilities that can enhance business decision-making, and that's for sure. Various type of AI can be put to contribution. People in this crowd here, given that we're at the AI conference, know all about AI, and naturally, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room of the last 18 months, 2 years now of generative AI. But there are a very large type of different AIs that can be used. And these type of AIs, a lot of them have been used successfully in business for years. So we shouldn't throw the baby away with the bathwater. This AI that's been there, that's proven its success, should be used where adequate. I'm not saying stay with your technology debt or your legacy systems, but consider whether the new things you're looking at is really useful or successful. So what we've been seeing with the LLM movement, the large language movement, or the everybody refers to ChatGPT as being the iconic, just like everybody refers to the iPhone as being the iconic type of new way of doing communication. ChatGPT is the new way of doing AI, and it's basically the shiny new thing that everybody was running after and wants to have one, just like everybody wanted an iPhone if you could afford it. Back then, now everybody wants to have a ChatGPT-like thing. And what we're seeing is that most of the success or the concrete application of these large language models have been in the notions of chat. So we see everything from chat with your foundation model, which is a ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is, chat with your document, chat with your product documentation, chat with your software, basically chat with everything. But what this is really telling us or making us realize as we're in the advent of this freeform conversational type of interfaces. And that's not negligible. I'm not much in favor, and I would ask everybody in this crowd, to not add to the hype of AI as it is right now. This is to the detriment of all organization, the consumers, and all of us as vendors in this technology. We should be very pragmatic and call it like it is and actually guide people towards it. So I would argue that what we're living in right now is not really an AI revolution at all, but it's a UI UX revolution, a user interface, a user experience revolution, where the real contribution of generative AI right now, it lies in the fact on how we can interact with software via the AI. So it's making it more natural to do different interaction. And that's important, again, on how we perceive this usage within our daily workflows. So very quickly, people may take exception with my way of categorizing the history of user experience and UI, but those of us that are old enough did a lot of punch card. I even did punch tapes in my early career. We all lived through the green screen with large hardware and software organization. Then we lived through the point and click interface, which is still predominant right now. And now we have this natural language interface where we can communicate with the software like we would with other humans. And that is, to me, the real revolution that we're living right now. Now, the hype will make you believe all kinds of things. And as every vendor does, I have to, at least once a week, tell the customer that, no. The AI cannot just take a document and generate all for you out of it. People believe that. Some people will argue it's possible. I'd like to see the proof. So basically, the cautious tale here is don't use Gen AI for every business problem. It is not the proper thing. Gen AI has certainly shown its capability as a generator. It's an amazing application for communication. It's an amazing application for generation. And everything that relates to languages, whether they are natural languages or programming languages or structured languages, generative AI is very powerful in support of these ideas. But it is a probabilistic model. It is non-deterministic. I don't think that I want to put in a life critical or mission critical, and a lot of our customers have life and mission critical systems that they put live, controlling trains, airplanes, and all kinds of healthcare, clinical type of thing. You don't want something that will suddenly go off the rail and tell you, well, try this. No, I want to make sure that what we do is deterministic and we ensure that we get the same result. Just quoting Gartner here, I could have quoted many different people, and they also basically push that idea that generative AI is really interesting when it comes to communication and generation of content. So I want to do a quick sidetrack on automating decision directly from document source. As I mentioned a bit, this is a demand we get often. I even got it yesterday again. There's this kind of belief, or, with everything, the demos and all that, that you can basically start from any documented guideline or procedure that are documented in natural language and generates the automation of this. I'll go from this document to the automation. Well, the problem is that I'll say all because it is my personal experience, some may be better, but most of the guidelines and most of these procedures all have either incoherence or contradiction. And if these documents you're starting from are laws and regulation, which a lot of our customers do, in banking and mortgage and healthcare, there's all kinds of laws and regulation, but you have to remember that laws and regulation are intentionally written to leave interpretation. It's by design. A law or regulation is written to leave interpretation, and that's why we have the court, and the court system is to validate whether your interpretation is one that is acceptable to the best of all the people. Now, the question is, do you really want to automate gaps and contradiction? So do you want to start from a document with gaps and contradiction and automate that? Or do you really want the AI to make the judgment call for you when you're actually in a life or mission critical type of environment? You're going to be liable, not the AI. So this has already been quoted. A recent document of research that came out a week or two ago basically suggested that more than 80% of AI projects fail. That's twice the rate that is acceptable in computer science or software projects, which usually are rated at about 40% of failure. So that's twice of it. And this document is very interestingly point out that the biggest problem is people run after the latest shiny thing. You should not focus on the technology. You should focus on the problem and how the problem gets solved, whether it's using AI or traditional coding or, I'm always amused of people that go and do in ChatGPT 1+1. Do you know how much processing power it takes for ChatGPT to do 1+1? When we know how to do that in the chip, in hardware, we've known that for at least 50 years. We can make it very efficient. Why would we do maths in there? So we have to find the right tool for the right problem. So as Jacob alluded in his introduction, I make the comment or the argument that we're not really in the age of artificial intelligence. We're in the age of augmented intelligence, where we don't let these systems replace the human, but come to enhance our capability. And that's how we should think of them. We should look at how can we team up with these AI systems to get better decision, to make our tasks more efficient, and integrate them just where they add value. So the idea is, it's not a bad tool, and it's got its flaws like any other tool we've created. But if we use it where it's really efficient and effective, then we advance. So I want to argue for the imperative of human oversight in business decision making. The dream of, general AI, may come to fruition. I've been part of the people chasing it for 40, many years. But right now we're not there. And we also have to look at how important human oversight and judgment is in all this. Because remember, although we're all looking very much so for explainable AI, there's a whole lot of explainable AI for the last 10 years, explainable AI is very important, but we also need justifiable AI. Not just that it's explainable and this is why you were refused, but is this justifiable according to our own strategic vision as an organization? Because different organizations, in the light of the same facts, will take different decisions. Some insurance will grant you a loan based on their view of what risk they're willing to do. Well, another one may not give you the loan for the same reason. So there's this strategic vision, there's this justifiable according to, yes, ethics and standards, but also to the organization visions and direction. In the end, what will differentiate us is really how we go about, it's not the automation. If we all have the same automation, we all get the same results. So this AI-human collaboration is really there and can enhance our decision-making in businesses. So the idea is to combine both strengths, human strength, where we bring intuition, and AI strength, where it excels at processing large number of data and amount, and gives us this human oversight where we have the ethical consideration that are there and also accountability. Carl Lehman from 451 Research, we were discussing last week, and he was making this point with me about accountability, the fact that now what they're calling for and what everything is calling for is that we should not only be accountable in the general sense, somebody should be named. That particular decision, whether automated or not, is under the accountability of this particular person. And we're going to see, I think, more and more regulation enforcing these ideas. So there's tons of different decisions that can be made, name it, you have it, financial decision, customer-centric decision, technology and digital transformation decision, etc. So for years, various disciplines have approached the idea of business decision-making from different perspectives. Now, for those of you that know me, I am biased. I'm a model-driven type of mind person. So I look at the world from the model-driven point of view. So I would argue that computer science, leveraging rule-based system and all this has progressed towards what we call decision models today, where the folks in operational research have, pushed mathematical model and linear and nonlinear type of programming towards optimization models. System engineer have system models. Certainly OMG has a very large contingent of people doing SysML, which is a system engineering type of modeling language. Behavioral science have done mostly predictive model with different type of success, and we can discuss that in the question if somebody wants to have a chat about what I think of predictive models. Emotional models and psychology, cost-benefit type of model in economics. But you get the gist, is we get a lot of different models, and the reason is that each perspective bring a value add. For years I've been making the analogy of an aquarium. If you look at an aquarium, From the front, I see two fish in front of a rock, but the person on the other side only sees a rock. And we can argue days and night about the fact that in this aquarium, there's two fish in front of the rock. The other person will argue there's only a rock. We're talking about the same aquarium. We're both correct, but we all have a different perspective, a different angle, and a different context to make our conclusions. So we have to involve all this. Now, decision-making in general goes from a continuum from completely human-based decisions. So people are actually doing the decision based on their intuition, their judgment, and their knowledge. At the other end, we have fully automated decision-making where the system actually makes the decision. And right now, in organization, we have those two extremes. So we have a lot of fully automated decision. Mortgage decisions are made automatically. We have all kinds of different decisions that are made automatically. But there is a continuum between the two where we can support the human in doing assisted decision making, where we use tools like canvases and different things, or augmented decision making where the human is still making the decision, but it's heavily guided by the automation. And then we have semi-automated type of decision where the machine makes the decision, but the human press the OK to process it. So this continuum is very important because when you're looking at automating things, you should be looking at this continuum. And not every task, not every decision should be aimed to be fully automated. Some of them needs to be still in the probably full human decision-based element. So the best way to achieve this is to create what's called a decision playbook. It's the idea that we have some scaffolding and some instruction on how we make decisions. And this decision playbook should be your own organization decision playbook. And it usually, introduce steps and decision criteria and how we do that. And I would argue that even if you're doing purely human-based decision, actually even more so in that case, you should have such a decision playbook that guides how we make decisions so we have consistent, explainable, and justifiable type of decisions. Now, when we go in the realm of automation, if you want to automate these business decision playbook, again, you've got to look at that spectrum I was talking about, but then you have to start doing something new, something more advanced, and you have to start engineering your business decision. So not just, here's how we make decision, or here's what you have to consider, but actually engineer the decision so it leads to the consistent results we want. And you need to do some orchestration to make sure that you bring in the mix all the information, the data, the workflows and everything, and humans to get to your decision. So engineering business decision, it's all about engineering concept, precision, transparency, traceability, flexibility, reusability, explainability. But you have to have a focus on transparency and ethical decision making. And that, even if there's no automation, your decision as an organization, if you're a bank or if you're a surgeon that will decide on whether to do the surgery or not, your decision should be transparent and ethical. So one way to look at your decision playbook is to consider 4 facets. I've been talking of these 4 facets of business for quite a few years now, at least 15 years. The idea of going from strategy to operation, outside in and inside out view of the organization. And when you start looking at these different perspectives, I would argue that the strategy perspective will usually be more about canvases and brainstorm and helping you to get to your strategy with different data points, and requires a lot more of creative thinking. Where when you're on the operations side, you want to make sure things are done the same way efficiently. So there you're using more models and strict analysis and using critical type of thinking. So based on these and what I just mentioned, you can by yourself come to the conclusion that what I recommend is that on the creative thinking side, you start using notions of generative AI. That's where you can start using generative AI and large language models, where they can support this creative thinking, augment the creativity, inject new ideas, and explore different possibilities, where the human is really doing the work. The generative AI is just there as an assistant or a co-pilot. So for example, I put an example now, and I can jump into demos, but for example, within the TriZetech platform, we have a tool that's called the landscaping tool, where well, why don't I go and show you? So within the landscaping tool, it's one of the tools we have for doing all kinds of decisioning, business decisioning. So let's say I want to do a SWOT analysis, and then I can go and ask my little friend here to help me. And let me put here so that you don't see me typing with mistake. So TriZetech is considering creating a knowledge worker co-pilot based on advanced AI techniques to enhance its decision-centric orchestration platform. And then the generative AI will help me with creating different ideas that can be added to my SWOT analysis, maybe making me think of other aspects that I haven't talked of or didn't think of in terms of what are my strengths, weaknesses, and different aspects. Now, you could also do other types of model. What would be popular, I guess, just for the sake, let me just do a business motivation model, which basically tells you, vision and mission, strategy and goal and objectives. And if I put the same kind of input here, you can see that the generative AI is helping me create, based around this simple topic that I've provided, help me create my vision and my mission and my strategic and my goals and my tactical approach to everything. So the whole idea is basically to support your work as you're going through. So now, when we're on the operational side, I would argue that that's where you want to have systemic type of decision that are deterministic, so they're always doing the same thing and explainable. And therefore, this critical thinking, I would argue that symbolic decisions, rule-based or other symbolic approach are more appropriate. And that's where naturally things like DMN, the decision model annotation, and its decision requirement diagrams help you structure and engineer your decision in a repeatable way. And whether you can inject non-determinism in there, that's a different topic for us on the DMN revision task force to decide whether it's going to remain deterministic, but certainly that's one of the push there, where you can define basically the rules that guides how you want these decisions to be made, so you can actually be very precise with the decision logic. I encourage every vendor to use the DMN standard. I encourage you to participate in the DMN revision task force and in the DMN TCK to showcase your adherence of the standard. So that is certainly a big step for our industry as we're going forward. Now, on the inside out and outside in perspective, if you think about it for a few minutes, the outside in is all about value to the customer. So it's everything about empathy mapping, customer journeys, and these elements, where the inside out view is all about value to the organization. So basically is making sure that we have, RACI type of accounting within the organization, that we have the breakdown of the who, what, when, and where, and that we have our process that are guiding everything that we do. So again, I think you can make the conclusion very simply where I'm making my recommendation. Of value to the customer, you're going to want to involve the generative AI so that you can have a more human type of interaction. I was praising the usage of Gen AI for communication and generation of messaging, where you can actually fit it to the preference of the person. And Gen AI is very good at doing that aspect. Whereas from an organizational point of view, and you want to do your inside out, you want to make sure that your operational efficiency is based on strict adherence to a set of regulation constraint or rules or internal decisions that you make. So therefore, I would promote the usage of symbolic decisions. So I've been talking, last year I've introduced this fact that I think neurosymbolic, so the mixture of symbolic AI with generative AI is really the way to go. So it shouldn't be any surprise that I'm promoting the same concept this year, just trying to guide you on how you can apply it, certainly how we find it's best to apply it with our customer around the world. So simply, if you think about deciding, deciding is really about selecting between different options. And if you think about what thinking is, it's basically about analyzing the context. And that's a view that I've had ever since my research in AI for my postgraduate studies about the importance of context. Now, when deciding, context is everything. Because certainly I'm an old military guy, so my military officer training always taught me to make the best decision you can given the information you have at the moment you make that decision. So you're always very grounded and contextual about your decision making. And that's certainly true about business decision. The different decision we'll make will take you to a particular spot where you are currently. And based on the decision you make now, different potential outcome will open up for you. And Alan may recall he and I having an esoteric conversation about my notion of web of belief and what needed to be done in a pub in the UK many years ago around the DMN RTF. So business context. So context is king, context is everything. For the last, I don't know how many years, forever, when we think of business context, people always refer to business facts. Everything about past and present observation that are supported by data. So it's all about data. My personal view is that was a very unfortunate decision from computer science to be based on data 50 years ago. Some of us were trying to be based on knowledge. We're still fighting that fight. It seems like now it's coming back with AI. But there's also, the context also includes your business value. So these values are as important as the fact, the data fact, to ensure that you get the desired bias. So we want to get out of the undesired bias, but there is a desired bias. I want to make this my company. I want to make this my decision. I want my organization value to be reflected in my business decision. And therefore, business value is an important factor in the context. So this slide is about the necessity of explainable and justifiable. So we talk a lot about explainable, and there's all kinds of algorithms to make, reverse engineer the explainable of, useless. What we want is that it is explainable, but we want it to be justifiable. So let's focus on the judgment. And that judgment is you own that from yourself or your company. And that's very important. So how do we get that nuance of this social, cultural, and emotional factors that AI may miss, and actually most likely will miss? Well, we need to make sure that we're not only data-driven when we're contextually looking, but that we're looking at other aspects. So here's a slide that I've been using for 4 or 5 years now that shows my view of what this is. So starting from data, you can get your aggregated data. This aggregated data, you'll augment it with schema, and then that gives you computable data and therefore can lead to data automation. And we've been living in that world a lot of time. More recently, we added, schemas and metadata and some context and event awareness, which give us that data in context. Well, with that data in context, we have information automation, which is quite usable and quite valuable. But if we add to the mix the orchestration of knowledge, with that, then we get this workflow and decision automation that brings in task and case and events and AI and decision all to the mix. And that's where we can add that decision-centric orchestration. That's where you get that value. So not to say that doing things on data like BI and intelligence, just a little sidetrack. What I don't like about the new decision intelligence term personally is that to me, it's reflecting of the notion of dashboards and business intelligence that is all about dashboard. And believe me, we failed more than enough with dashboards. So this is where dashboards are. We gotta go up the ladder. And many organizations are up the ladder, and many organizations are successfully implementing decision-centric orchestration. We have a bunch of case studies in healthcare, in agriculture, in the rail industry. It's a very powerful thing. So what should such an structure look like? What the reference architecture of this decision-centric orchestration should look like? Basically, you should have this symbolic AI workflow and case automation orchestration that can also orchestrate predictive model and generative model and orchestrate this and expose it whatever the user experience is desired, whether it's through API or chat or whatever, and should connect to all your data source and ground it into your various business events or data source that you have in the organization. I'll take a second before I conclude to look back. Tom de Beauvois and I will be doing a presentation tomorrow on knowledge worker assistance. This is very interesting to me. It's a research we've been doing for at least 3 years. Actually, we reported every year here at DecisionCAMP on the progress of that work. And we're tackling basically what still seems to be as the unbreakable part of automation, which is knowledge work, where the knowledge work is there to contribute value from his knowledge in coordinating and doing everything that has to do. So we're in the realm of choreography of multiple participants as opposed to processing from a single perspective realm of control. So when you get into that realm of choreography, we have a very adaptive type of situation with events, communication going from every direction, and we're hitting some very concrete results. So I invite you to attend that presentation tomorrow if you're interested in that topic. So in conclusion for today, I would say the idea is to make good business decision is to strike the right balance that is right for you, for your organization, between human insight and AI automation. Think of it from your organization, because in the end, that's who you're trying to make people understand. Whether I buy my phone from Apple or from Samsung, there's all kinds of decision elements in there, but I know I'm making a choice because they're very different in their delivery of that technology. And that's what you should look to do from your organization. If you're going to use this automation, this AI, you should make sure that it reflects the quote-unquote personality of your organization that you want them to foresee and perceive when they interact with you. You need to understand this spectrum, not only of type of decision that can take place in an organization and the different type of models that were contributed from different groups of research, but you also have to look at the different level of decision making from a human point of view and see which level is adequate for each particular task in time. So basically, don't blindly put the new shiny toy in and assume that it will do everything for you. I can guarantee you it will not. All tests, all data are showing now that we're 2 years in trying to put the new shiny thing everywhere, it fails. But when you use it at the right place, in the right way, it brings enormous value. So make sure that you also incorporate contextual information. Context is king. The best decision, the best action is motivated by the context of where you are now, how you got there, and where you want to get to. So make sure you have context into your mix. So this is my shameless plug at the end. I call this the buzzword bingo slide. Please, if you see a buzzword that is not there on my slide, add it in the chat. I'll add it to the next version of this slide. Basically, this is the shameless plug of what Trizotech is doing in the market, and I'm now open to questions. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Denis. And it's, as usual, it's very enlightening and pragmatic and a little bit controversial presentation. You're not afraid to speak your mind, and this is great because it comes from practical experience. So let's see what questions we have. Please just unmute yourself and speak or type. Oh, we have a question from Jan. You can see it?
I knew somebody would pick up on predictive models. So the challenge with predictive...
Read the question, please.
Okay. It says, so can you please spill the beans on predictive models you've referred to? So basically, predictive models are very great when applied in common daily situation. They're horrible as decision makers. And the reason is that by definition, a predictive model is biased. It's biased on what it was trained on, or it's biased on what it was computed on, and the equation of it, it's a biased thing. Now, when it's guiding me onto what movie it thinks I will like, you know, even if it's kind of show me a movie, I watch it and I said, that was a terrible recommendation, you know, or, oh, hey, it keeps recommending the best movies for me, I enjoy the movies, that's great. But when it comes to predicting whether I will survive to a surgery and therefore lead to a decision on not doing the surgery, no, because the bad movie recommendation for life critical and system critical type of environment is not. So again, if the target you're shooting with predictive model, I will make the analogy, rather than shooting with a rifle, you're shooting with a shotgun. So a predictive model is shooting with a shotgun. Yeah, you will hit the target and all kinds of other things around it. But you may want a rifle in most of the specific shooting for the particular target when it's life and mission critical. Not sure if that, and feel free to jump in the vocal mic, Jan, if you want to discuss this more.
Jan, do you want to defend predictive models? Okay, I will, because I agree with your critique, but we do have a real practical experience when we use machine learning. For example, in such context, instead we have very sophisticated dialogue with customers, and we have some potential default answers. And when we provide them, we want to minimize total number of questions to ask. But when our system is in production for a few years, we accumulated majority of answers, and we can, machine learning gives us the best 3 possible answers. So first of all, we can reorder our combo boxes with potential answers, and we can offer even sometimes skip some questions and jump if we know that precision of these answers is more than 90%, and this is business rule. Then we provide this answer and provide auto responses to other questions. So it makes our dialogue much, much better. So this is one example when predictive model still works quite well.
Yeah, and we do use predictive model ourselves in many situations, and I'm not against them. I'm just, again, it's the argument of the shiny new thing, you know. For many years, you know, the movement was predictive model and machine learning, which was the new shiny thing. It was applied to everything, and was it adequate for everything? Now it's generative AI and large language model. Again, the idea is, you know, do not spend too much effort on these things. So.
Okay, Jan is right. We can continue to discuss this question on the expert panel tomorrow. Apparently,
Sure.
it would be popular topic. And more questions, please. Anybody?
So I guess everything I said was non-conflictual and everybody agree
No,
with what I...
we do have question. Elena, please go ahead.
Thank you, Denis, for the presentation. And I have question exactly for this slide, which you have now. Yes, could you go back for the SWOT analysis? It's referring to the choice configuration, because choice configuration can change a lot the decision. So once you have some choices here generated by AI, so the person will be affected on the way what is there and how it's presented. So what are the ways that the flow of thinking of the person who is working with the tool will be not such connected and limited with the choices which you have here?
Yeah, I didn't put enough context. So this tool here that we have, it's a collaboration tool. Basically a tool where we have a notion of what's called ideation, which this is a canvas type of exercise. So you probably know about different canvases approach. There's many different canvases that exist, and where different user will throw different post-it. This is an electronic version of post-it on the board, where different people will throw different ideas. And what we're suggesting here is that a generative AI model could also be another contributor that you call upon to generate some ideas and provide it with some context so that they provide. But in the end, whether some post-it from Jacob or from Jane makes it from Jan makes it at the end, it's a decision of the group, and then we rationalize what's been put there and we report on that. So it's more in a very collaborative type of creative thinking environment. So not sure if I really answered your question directly. Feel free to continue to ask.
Okay.
Yes, about this, yes, it's very interesting. And in more broader context, how do you see that both predictive model and generative model, how they could affect the decision of the people?
Well, there's various ways of injecting these. So I've tried to allude with the 4 quadrants of operational, strategic and operational, inside out and inside out, how you could maybe target a particular type of AI in one particular quadrant that you're working on. There's no, as you know, there's no one thing fits all. It's got to be tailored, and the argument I was trying to make is that it even has to be tailored to your company's vision and view and culture, not just to the technology. So some people may decide to use predictive model more often and use it very, very often in the flow of their decision making, where other people may not use any of it because they feel it has an aspect that they cannot justify to their customer. And it depends. I mean, I won't name an insurance company, but there was detail about a particular insurance company that was using these kinds of models. And when they were challenged about the fact that their algorithms were biased, they said, yeah, it is biased. We are a biased organization. We don't give money to everybody. So I guess the argument I'm trying to make is that there's always going to be bias. There's bias, even if it's human that's making decision. As an organization, we try to have a common view and make the common decision based on the organization bias. And sometimes, if you're a CEO of a company, communicating your vision and your values is very important to make sure that everybody in your organization behave accordingly, or you hope they behave accordingly, so that the perceived view of the external of your company is what your vision is to be projected. The same goes when you put automation in. Again, the argument is if everybody do exactly the same thing, we're going to get exactly the same results from all the organization. So there's value in this mixture of putting more predictive model, more generative model. I personally like to suggest that generative model are extremely good at doing everything that has to do with communication, treating language, extracting entities. It's very efficient, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow in that knowledge worker Copilot presentation. But what we used to do just 3 years ago, our first presentation at DecisionCAMP on that, we were doing everything in a very hard, it was hard to do good entity extraction and context setting. Now LLM allow us to do that in a very, very efficient and quick way. So I'm not against any of the technology. I'm just saying they should have their right use at the right time.
Good.
Thank you.
Any more questions, please? We have time for one more question. No? Denis, I will ask a question because title of your presentation was about decision-centric orchestrations, and Arash mentioned orchestration, and it's one of the hottest topic in our community right now. And as you know, there are many ways to implement orchestrations, and one of them, why it's so important, because people who move into decision management space from software world, they forgot about lessons from software world, that building huge monolithic system leads you to disaster. And people started building huge decision models that does everything. And as a result, after a while, they find out that it's not maintainable. So that's why we're talking about orchestrations. But it's very important how to orchestrate loosely coupled decision microservices. And we have such tools as, let's say, AWS steps functions. It's very nice state machine, but it's too technical. But I believe that orchestration logic is also business logic, and we can apply the same tools what we have to do this orchestration. What is your take on this?
Yeah, thank you. That's a nice love ball for me to hit. As many people may know, I'm a big defender of the standards BPMN, CMMN, and DMN. So DMN already discussed today in the context of decision making is an amazing tool for structuring your decision logic. But we also have BPMN and CMMN, where BPMN is a great tool for structuring your prescriptive type of models, where you want to say, when this happened, do this, when that happened, do that. But then we also have CMMN for case management, where you're in a more data and event-driven type of environment, where rather than prescribing what should happen, you're reacting to the events that are happening. So it's more event-driven, so an event condition type of semantic, where if this event happens, here's what you should do. So these two tools are very powerful and useful tool for doing all the orchestration. So certainly a lot of the orchestration at TriZetech, we do all our orchestration based on BPMN and CMMN, and then going to another side that is not orchestration, which is the notion of choreography. So a lot of people, it's interesting because we're going back to so long ago in terms of research and theory. Now we're starting to cross into choreography, where we have multiple participants that needs to interact, where nobody has control over the other participant. So in an orchestration environment, you have control over what you do, whether it is in a prescribed way in BPMN or whether it is in an event-driven way in CMMN. You're still the one controlling your realm of control. But when you switch to the other side, you have multiple participants, then you get into a choreography situation where there's some kind of an implicit contract between the different users. Sometimes it is explicit. It says, here's what we need to do. But most of the time it's implicit. It's like, okay, yes, if you send me a critique, I will reply to your critique in this way. You know, there's this interaction, there's all these implicit type of contracts that we need to react to. So yes, orchestration, certainly, you know, been pounding on that nail for more than 20 years with different standards.
Okay, thank you, Denis. I would suggest, because of importance of these questions, maybe you is the right person to present this in a separate session after DecisionCAMP, and we will organize this session. And thanks again for a very good presentation.
Thank you,
Stop
everybody.
recording. Okay, it's time for our